Good evening and welcome to Vampire Wednesday. As usual, I'm your host, Matt Holland. I am coming to you from the past. This is a pre recorded intro here, and the bulk of tonight's episode will be a pre recorded interview with our first double Prince of the City winner, Ali Cavacini. So that's going to be a cool treat. Get her perspective on the game, on winning twice, all what that takes, the process behind that, and a little bit about the super supportive Los Angeles meta that Ali is a part of. So that comes later, but first I have a little bit of news for y'all. uh, First thing, congratulations to Michael I think it's Tremarsh, the Prince of Palm Bay, who won our Florida event last weekend. Michael, I believe, was running an Invisible Army deck, so something a little bit different with the Haven thrift store. So cool to see, some new ideas, some fresh ideas popping up and winning some events. And then, of course, this weekend we've got two more tournaments. One is the second to last tournament in the United States. It is at Castle of Games in Eugene, Oregon. I know those guys, they're going to put on a fantastic event. So if you're anywhere nearby and you don't have your print title yet, that's the place to be this weekend. On the other hand, if you are overseas in Berlin, Germany, at the Brettspielplatz in Berlin, there will be a Prince of the City, Prince of Berlin. So head overseas, get some bratwurst, have some great beer, and play some Vampire. Uh, in addition to that, the weekend after we head to Barcelona, Spain, to El Archivo Arcano, which I think is the coolest game store name I've ever seen. And they'll be running the first Spanish Prince of the City event on July 2nd. So there's still a couple more coming up. We've got July 23rd in Redmond, Washington. July 30th is our Canadian event in Toronto at 401 Games. September 3rd in Madrid, Spain. September 10th in Manchester, United Kingdom. And September 11th in Brussels, Belgium. So still chances for you to win Prince of the City, but Prince of the City is not all that we have going on. Of course, I'm talking about the Continental Conclave for North America at Gen Con. If you are not registered for Gen Con already and you're not planning on joining us, like what's going on, join us. I will say a thing that I'm excited about. Gen Con just put out their policy on masks and vaccinations. It's going to be nice having caught COVID myself at a convention. I'm excited to see that they're going to be taking it pretty seriously. So if you're nervous about that, hopefully that sort of thing helps you want to come. We have some great events planned. We've got the one-on-one, we've got the team event, and of course the Continental Conclave. The Continental Conclave is going to be happening Friday and Saturday. There's some fantastic participation prizes. We will be using that awesome new Prague City deck and the special promo pack that replaces the default events from that to new events that are themed all around the Continental Conclave. So take a look, check out the stream where we went through all those. If you're preparing, you just want to make sure you know what you're in for in that city deck. And then, of course, Heart of Europe will be legal. So check out all of our preview streams where Hyra and I went through all the cards in there, talked about some of the possibilities, some of the new play styles that those encourage, because that's all going to be legal and valid during Gen Con. One note, Heart of Europe, we had previously said would either be releasing today or next Wednesday. That has slipped a little bit, just the kind of ongoing shipping crisis that has been affecting all of our games strikes again here. We are now looking at a early to mid-July release. However, we are going to continue with our plan to have Heart of Europe legal at Gen Con. That's what people have been preparing for. That's what the whole event is themed around. We're going to stick with that. So stay tuned. Vampire Wednesdays will be giving updates on release date as we get something more firm. But the product is in the United States. It's just held up at one of the steps along the way of getting it into your hands. Those of you in Europe, your Heart of Europe, ironically, will be lagging by a couple weeks from the US release date whenever that does happen. That should not affect any of the major tournaments because the ones that could possibly happen or could possibly use Heart of Europe will be in September, and things should be well sorted out by then. But just wanted to give people an update. If you're waiting, you'll be waiting a little bit longer than the American players. So apologies for that. I know it's frustrating for everyone, but we will have Heart of Europe on the deck builder and card database this week. We've got full spoilers out there for the city deck and the events and everything. So hopefully that will allow you to adequately prepare for Gen Con and kind of craft your decks, theory craft, and maybe do some proxying and practicing. Because I know we're very excited to see that in everybody's hands. And I know people have been, thinking about building their Disheveled Shelves deck or any of the new cards in there. And we want to make sure that's possible for Gen Con. Other news for today, I believe last week, Matt Hyra talked about 2 potential errata, and we have a little bit more news on those. So the Extinguish Vitae changes that have been discussed in order to prevent people from claiming Prince of the City twice or benefiting from Prince of the City title twice in one turn. We did a little bit different tact with that. So instead of changing Extinguish Vitae, we're just adding 2 small rules to the actual process of claiming Prince of the City. That will fix the Extinguish Vitae and any other cards that may come along in the future that could have similar issues. So those new rules that are in the card and rules update as of today. If your vampire with Prince title is defeated by a vampire in your coterie, the Prince title returns to the streets. So you cannot kill your own guy and take that Prince right there, getting it twice. And by the same sort of token, if a character in your coterie loses the Prince title during your turn, you cannot perform a claim the Prince of the City title action that same turn. So while the Prince title goes to the streets, it just means you also cannot then pop out into the streets and grab it. So preventing double dipping, and that just works for any other situations in which this might be possible. A little bit cleaner than just fixing one card. And then Hoard the Herd is indeed receiving an errata. Matt Hyra discussed it last week, but I'll just go through it again here and let you guys know that this is going to go into effect on July 15th. Hoard the Herd is getting an additional line where the cost to win, instead of 13 VP or 13 agenda, the cost to win there is increased by 2 for each other copy of Hoard the Herd at the table. So if there are 2 copies in a 4-player game, it is 15 agenda to win. If there are 3 copies, 17, and so on. So Hoard the Herd becomes very strong when you have multiple copies of it at the table. This just makes them have to work a little bit harder when they're all kind of helping each other towards that goal, and hopefully brings Hoard the Herd down into a more sort of average level of performance with the other agendas. So look for that errata to go live on July 15th. That's a week from a month from last week when Matt Hyra announced it. So we will be adding that to the updates along with the dates that it's effective. And you can go download that right now and just see it in person if you'd like to. With that, I believe we are going to head over to our pre-recorded interview with Ali Cavacini, Prince of Fort Collins, Prince of San Diego, all-around nice gal, and hear about her perspective of being a double Prince winner and our first woman to win a Prince title anywhere yet. So I hope you guys enjoy that interview. I hope that we see you at one of these upcoming Prince events, and I hope that we see you at Gen Con or the TBD European event that I promise we'll have info on soon. Thanks to everybody overseas for being so patient. So without further ado, here is me talking to Ali. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And I have a special guest tonight. Here we have Ali Cavacini, the Prince of both Fort Collins, Colorado and San Diego, California. Welcome, Ali.
Yeah, hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm glad that we've managed to link up and talk. I know I wanted to talk to you after Fort Collins, and in the meantime, you went ahead and won a second title. So not only our first, I believe the first woman to win one of the Prince events, but also the first double Prince winner. So kind of really rolling in it now, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess so.
So Fort Collins and San Diego, 2 wins. You also were top 4 at, I believe, Burbank. Or was it Pasadena? One of the 2 California ones. Okay.
Pasadena.
So nice, consistent performance and showing up with 2 different decks for your wins. So I think we got a lot to talk about with you. But first off, kind of tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, what got you into Rivals? What path led you to playing this card game? Share with everybody. How does one become a 2-time Prince?
Yeah, so when I was little, I always grew up playing games with my dad, but nothing, just like poker. And
Sure.
then have never played any game like this before, didn't really know they existed. But then Jordan introduced me. He taught me Conquest, and so we were playing that.
Okay.
And then we got into Key. I got to a point and I was like, okay, well, now what do we do? Like, there's no new cards. Like, this is all that can happen. And so we started getting into Keyforge, and then we were buying Keyforge cards, and then it was Rivals, and we were like, oh, okay. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but
Sure.
yeah, that's really it. But just playing with him. Yeah.
Jordan, of course, Prince of Burbank. Yes, yes. Okay. So really a strong partner to be practicing with and crafting things with. Did you know about Vampire the Masquerade, the World of Darkness at all before this game, or was this really your first intro?
Yeah, first intro.
Cool. So like all the politics, all the things that kind of go on behind the scenes in the World of Darkness, this is your first exposure to it in the form of the card game.
Exactly.
What about Rivals? Like, what's your kind of your favorite thing about it? Like, what makes it like click for you?
Um, I mean, I love the idea of vampires in general, like, but I think really the game, the multiplayer aspect of it all. I love sitting down and talking and like the table talk that happens, and then just having to like when you play, like you're not only sitting behind your hand, but then you're sitting behind everyone else's hand at the table and making decisions. So I just like it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Mhm.
And that I think is the thing that is unique about the game that stands out for a lot of people, that it's not just, a tug of war between you and one other person. It's kind of like 4D chess. Uh,
Yeah.
so let's talk real quick. Fort Collins, that was now several weeks ago. You played a Strength in Numbers and Dragon's Roost deck, correct? It was
Yes.
pretty close to what you'd played at Pasadena and made top four.
Yes.
It
Yeah. There
looks like
was
there was some
like
changes.
maybe like one or two cards were different, but it's same deck, same idea.
And so where did that one kind of come from? That seemed similar to I think what Edward Kim played at
Yes.
Roseville even. So it's kind of the using Bad Penny, throwing her out there to block critical attacks with Dragon's Roost.
Yeah. Jordan. He pretty much comes up with any concept and then kind of hands it to me and then I play it. So I played that like a lot with our
Sure.
local tournaments in LA when we first started playing Rivals. That was kind of like the first deck that kind of set the standard for every deck after.
Hmm.
But it's the same deck that Edward Kim played.
And he may of course made top four at Roseville. So like the deck definitely performs. What
Mhm.
about it? Like what makes it really interesting for you? Is it that ability to interact with everybody so much with Dragon's Roost, or something else?
I mean, I like playing it. I definitely like playing like aggro decks more. It's just so good. It's just successful, but it's hard to stop. Like, because once it's there, you kind of have to. The whole table has to be convinced to come at you and stop it. And if they're not, then it just goes too fast.
That makes sense, and I mean, like we've seen, it's very good, and having that ability to just deny people, that SAD they wanted to take out, or that mortal, or even taking out the last vampire of their rival is very, very useful. But I noticed when you won San Diego just here recently, you changed things up pretty significantly. Why? What happened to was it new cards in Shadows and Shrouds, or was it something else entirely?
Not really, because the one I played in San Diego is like pretty basic. It doesn't have too many new cards in it, if
Hmm.
any, but I have more fun playing aggro decks. I think
Sure.
it like challenges my mind more, but Jordan and I were just kind of talking and it hadn't won like a prince yet. So I was kind of like, let me just bring that one and see what happens. But I definitely prefer playing that deck. I think it's It's way more fun and mentally taxing.
So for anybody who is tuning in who doesn't know anything about the deck, the San Diego deck was Playthings as the agenda. The pit, now this was pre-pit errata.
Yes.
And then you've got, let me open up this guy's here, Brother, the Cossack, Beretta, Aurora Nyx, Li Shu Chen, Bongcha Park, and Smoke. That is a fairly stacked selection of vampires, and they're also quite popular. Was there any concern about running, like we've in the top 4 decks that I've been cataloging, like Smoke shows up at 18 times. Li Shu's 11, Bongcha is 13. Was there any fear running this deck about running into a situation where you can't play the vampires you want?
Yeah, definitely. I think like right before the new cards came out, like there were people playing Beretta and Cossack. But once the new cards were legal, like a lot of people were playing newer cards, either Race or La Sombra. So there was a little fear, but I was pretty confident that everyone was gonna be playing La Sombra, because
Sure.
we all LA, it was mainly LA there with a few San Diego players, so you kind of have an idea what
You
everyone's
know
gonna
what your community is
yeah.
generally playing. So, and that's a good point. Maybe it was a perfect storm of the new stuff is legal. A lot of people have moved on to that. You already have a title, so maybe the pressure's off a little bit, and you're like, I'm going to play what's fun. Not necessarily play the thing that is mechanically really great, but not as interesting to you personally. And then it just kind of came all together. Uh, what's the strategy? Just straight up play things? Like, is there any tricks to it? You're just taking mortals, or are you winning by coterie elimination? Like, what's going on?
It's all over the place, but that's kind of why I like it. So the 4 games I won, I think the first I won by 13 agenda. The second I won, I don't know the order, but I won with a coterie knockout, and then the next I won with an off rival like Prestige Drain, and then the
Oh,
fourth was
jeez.
Agenda at time. So it that deck kind of shifts all over the place. So it's just about like making the right call at the right moment, which is another thing I like about it, because I can win by agenda with playthings, or I can switch and just knock someone's vampires out. But that day, like it won multiple different directions.
And that's the thing that we talk about a lot. Like with any deck, you need to have at least 2 different ways to win. So if somebody is really in your way in one of them, you can kind of pivot. Seems like this deck has that in spades.
Yeah.
One question I have for you: do you think that with the change to the pit only giving an unhosted action, does that completely change this deck? Do you think that that is not really a huge concern for the way you play it? I'm just curious about your opinion.
Yeah, so I definitely played that deck before the errata, and then playing it now, I didn't notice I didn't notice much of a difference. I didn't feel like
Sure.
it changed play that much. And normally with the deck, like it's Brother, and then I'll play 2 different vampires. So I'll get 2 extra unhosted actions, but those still felt like super valuable.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I know that the reduction of the bonus for the pit from a regular action to an unhosted just stops people from making multiple attacks right away. But if you're just using it to get a bonus vampire in or any number of other things, it's still, I think, quite useful. But people might be just disappointed that, oh, I can't do the old trick anymore. So glad to see that
Yeah.
at least in your case, it doesn't kill this archetype for you.
Yeah, I think too with like the aggro, it's also nice to like draw those cards to have the perfect attacks, because if you're gonna win with aggro, it's not gonna be until later rounds. So just getting the right attack cards for the right time, like, and setting that up is kind of what's happening anyway, or what, you know.
Yeah. So when you're playing this playthings deck, at least, is there any sort of are there any decks you're really on the lookout for that are worrying to you, or that when you see somebody sit down across the table with a particular haven and a leader, you're thinking, okay, I just need to be really on edge?
Um, no, I'm trying to remember my first game though. It was I had playthings, and then Hoard the Herd, and then oh gosh, what's the one with getting the vagrants?
Invisible Army.
Yeah, Invisible Army. So it was a 3-player game. And that was a really interesting dynamic because that game was a little more difficult to manage, but that was just kind of like the state of the table because we were also focused on the city, and anything that we were doing was helping the herd. So it was just really interesting. But beyond that, and then like the vampire
Situation.
and vampires out, yeah, I don't think so.
That's the mark of a good deck if there's not, a sort of a silver bullet that you have to be worried about.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Because
I mean
there's a lot of
sometimes
decks that can win, and then I run into the kryptonite for my deck, and I'm done. You don't want that.
right. And I think that's just when the switch happens. Like I've sat across from people, or I'll pull a rival token. It's like, okay, well, most likely I'm not knocking them out. So this is a game where I'm going to go for the 13 agenda.
Sure.
So I'll have decks that influence that decision, but I never feel like I'm like, like I'm stuck.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there anything like Shadows and Shrouds just came out? We've got Heart of Europe that we've now fully spoiled. It's going to be legal for Gen Con. First off, are you coming to Gen Con?
Yes, I just
Awesome.
bought tickets a couple days ago.
Fantastic. That's going to be a lot of fun. But now Gen Con's going to be yet another change up to the card pool. Is there anything in Heart of Europe or Shadows and Shrouds that you're really interested in exploring or playing with? Like not to give away whatever Jordan's got cooking up in the lab, but like, is there anything that you personally are like, ooh, I want to work this into something and make it viable?
Yes, the what's it called? Disheveled
Oh
shells. That's the
yes,
card.
the agenda for the
Yeah.
sort of the
So
mill win condition.
yeah, I had started trying to, because Jordan's always making decks, and I was like, I'm gonna make my own deck. So I sat down like when I first got into the game and tried to make a certain deck, and it just wasn't working. And Jordan's
Sure.
like, there's not the cards, there's not the cards, there's not the cards. But now with this release, I think there might be the cards. um, so yeah, disheveled shelves for sure.
That one I think is going to be a very interesting change to the game for everyone. Just
Mhm.
the people who are like, oh, I want to draw all the cards, are all of a sudden maybe rethinking that strategy, because we've seen University Library for a while was very, very popular among the top decks, and I get why, but that's kind of a boogeyman for someone who's just drawing constantly.
Right.
Um, and I think I have enjoyed. I understand people who have a frustration with mill, as a type of gameplay. I can totally sympathize, but it can be so fun to play, and I think sometimes very fun to play against when you're just like, it's so tense, and that every tool. Because I enjoyed playing in Destiny, Star Wars Destiny, and just knowing like, oh man, you just gotta think everything through so much, think several steps ahead. Like, if I spend this
Uh-huh.
card or if I draw this card, what does that enable my opponent to do to me? It's just so interesting, and it's a nice change of pace too. Like, it feels very different from playing against an aggro deck or a deck that's just racing for agenda. So I think that that's going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What about the special events that we're using at Gen Con to kind of shake up? It's already going to be a new city deck, Prague, but even apart from regular Prague, we've got the promos that we're going to be using for the city events. Are you kind of excited for this sort of wild west of the meta that's going to bring?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a little nervous, but I think it's really cool. It's an exciting concept. We have LA has like, um, we're just looking at the cards a lot. But I think it'll be fun. I'm excited for the team event.
Sure.
Um,
Now that the rules, Matt shared those last week while I was traveling, so
uh-huh.
people have gotten to kind of dig in and start thinking about the implications. I'm excited to see what kind of cards, or archetypes show up in that don't show up in just normal multiplayer, because I think that some of
Yeah.
the tweaks make certain things maybe more viable or more interesting. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. One thing about your guys' community, you keep talking about the LA community, and I know that is one of the probably the biggest, certainly most vocal, uh, and probably winningest now metas in the in the game at this point. Do you have any tips, like if I am, here in Minneapolis or wherever, and I want to grow and nurture a rivals community, what kind of tips could you share? Like what things have worked for LA to kind of build that scene? And I know some of it came from, for some people at least, it came from Game of Thrones, L5R, like people who already knew each other through other games. But maybe what can apply to just anywhere that doesn't necessarily have a, you know, a core group?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a few things. Like, I think the one thing that stands out about LA is like we're always like growing off each other and willing to help each other. Like, here, play my deck. Like,
Oh, cool.
um, and then helping each other out. We're very active on TTS even when we can't meet up. And then I know like Brandon, Prince of Minnesota, like anytime we're at a tournament or if we're having like small group play, like he'll just pull people over to the table. Hey, have you heard of Rivals? And like, I mean, really just bringing people in and getting them excited, and he'll sit there and teach them a game and then they're totally into it and we gain a new player. So, just being excited about it, and then like when not playing against each other, but
Sure.
building decks together and giving feedback to each other like after a game. I feel like just creates that excitement.
It's never good to like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to play this game, and then
LA's the best. LA's the best. Just so you know. LA, Chicago, Europe, anyone wants to challenge, LA's the best. Just saying that right now.
I did get a kick, when I met Brandon and at the Roseville event. I already knew Edward. I'd met him through Elder LCGs, but Brandon just talked a very big game about LA and how they're going to dominate. And I gotta say, like it has been proven out largely. So I have to say that the talk was matched up by your guys' performance. So props to everybody in that local sort of meta for that, because yeah, I was a little skeptical, I'm not gonna lie, but
No, yeah,
it has definitely been shown through.
yeah, we got a good group of players, highly competitive and hard to beat.
And it sounds like what you said is, when you go to a Prince event or something like that, yeah, the gloves come off. But if somebody shows up and wants to learn, you're not just going to pull out your ultimate deck and just, oh, sorry, you didn't get to play because I killed your vampire second turn. Like, oh, this is the game. Yeah, like that doesn't seem like what you guys do when you're dealing with a new player, or someone who's trying to get in. Like, you want to kind of nurture them and create a better opponent for yourself for the future. Exactly. It seems like that's pretty awesome. So you've already been to 3 Prince events at least. Are you planning to make it to any? Maybe you were at maybe 4 now.
4. Yeah.
Are you planning to make it to any more? I know we're kind of running short on US events here as we're headed into Gen Con, but that's going to be 4 is enough for you for the year?
Yes, 4 is enough for me, and then Gen Con.
And then we've just talked about it a little bit, but we've got the Clan Clash that's going to be happening later in the year. I predict a lot of those in the Southern California area because you guys have a lot of stores and a lot of players. So maybe adding a Primogen title or 2 to your belt there.
Maybe. We'll see.
It's gonna be awesome. I'm really excited for those as a good on-ramp that's a little bit less competitive than the Prince events, but still, gives people a reason to get together, compete, and kind of see who's doing the best there. That's pretty awesome. It's really cool to have someone who's now won 2. So not only will we make you a vampire, but then we'll be putting that vampire on another card at some point, so you can have, like you see Lishu show up all over the place. You see, Hydra and some of the other vampires on other cards, and it just makes the world like more alive to me. And I think it's going to be really exciting to have a player, their vampire, show up in a similar sort of situation. So I cannot give you enough congratulations for pulling out 2 wins, and being an all-around standout player.
Thank you so much.
One question though, what vampire clan are you? What vampire clan do you consider yourself?
Definitely Gangrel.
Gangrel.
I don't really play with them, but definitely thematically for sure Gangrel.
What about like you makes it Gangrel?
nature, animals, like I mean, I understand what Jordan just threw my cat across the
I was
room.
gonna say I was pretty sure I saw you like petting something just off screen earlier,
Yeah, on the ground.
either a
Yeah.
cat or a dog.
Mm-hmm. And then when we had our Burbank event, I dressed up as a gangrel, had like a whole get up.
Oh, okay.
Feathers in the hair. It's
And
pretty
now
fun.
you haven't really played them, like you just haven't found a deck that works for that, or not your play style. I'm
Um,
just curious.
no, I'm totally interested. I just haven't created anything. Uh, yeah, just haven't created something yet. But I mean, I love the vampires. Like I love animals. Just haven't had the time to create something with it.
And I
I
understand the
like summer
impulse.
a
Like,
lot.
what'd you say?
I said I like summer as a vampire a lot, but yeah, just haven't gotten to it.
And it's sometimes I'm sure hard to, why reinvent the wheel? Like if you're winning events with these, it's tough
Uh-huh.
to take time away from perfecting that deck and honing that skill to try something totally new. But now you got a little while before Gen Con.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is true. This is true. So maybe that's next, a winning gangrel deck.
That's fantastic. Well, Ali, I super appreciate you taking some time to chat. Just great to see, not only your guys' community, how strong it is, the fact that it is so welcoming and so helpful to get new players in, and is generating some really, really strong performance, I think is really awesome. And I am just very impressed that we have the double champion here, the double prince, Ali Cavacini herself. Uh, Anything else you want to share with people, like a tip or a shout out or anything?
I mean, shout out to all my LA players and the others that I've connected with on Discord. I don't know, a tip playing the game. I'm a very intuitive player. I can't like think about the cards and the math. So my tip would be, if you have a feeling, just go for it. Cause a lot of times that's what gets me wins.
So you're playing your hunches. You're kind of playing you're thinking like, oh, I think they're gonna try this thing, and you kind of act on that.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah,
right.
it works for me. I don't know.
If your intuition's not so good, maybe don't bank on that. But
maybe stick to the math, but
and that's really exciting too when you, if you're able to intuit something like that is maybe counterintuitive, like you're thinking, oh, this probably, like, this shouldn't have worked, but I read it right. That's a very exciting feeling when you can do that. When you
Mhm.
think like, oh, there's no way, like the math or logic says that this player should not do this thing, but I feel like they're gonna, and then when they do it and you were prepared for it, oh, that just feels so good. That's so
Uh-huh.
exciting. Awesome. Well, thanks for taking some time to chat, Ali. I am excited to meet you guys at Gen Con, see you guys playing at the sort of the highest level, and I wish you nothing but luck there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. Super excited.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you.